Emmanuel, Emmanuel, a child is born, a child is born. Sing glory to God on high, a child is born this night, and to all people peace, and to all people peace. Emmanuel, Emmanuel, a child is born, a child is born. Sing glory to God on high, a child is born this night, and to all people peace, and to all people peace, and to all people peace, and to all people peace. So today's scripture reading, I'm just going to launch right into it because there's more things to talk about after. Today's scripture reading is from Isaiah, chapter 35, verses 1, 2, 4, and 10. Feel free to read the intervening verses on your own time. They're also good but long-winded, as Isaiah tends to be. Now, Isaiah is one of the prophets that talks about Emmanuel, God with us, coming, which is why we were singing Emmanuel. But the scripture for today reads this: "The wilderness and the dry land shall be glad. The desert shall rejoice and blossom, like the crocus. It shall blossom abundantly and rejoice with joy and singing. The glory of Lebanon shall be given to it, the majesty of Carmel and Sharon. They shall see the glory of the Lord, the majesty of our God. Say to those who are fearful of heart, be strong, do not fear. Here is your God. God will come with vengeance and with terrible recompense. God will come to save you. And the ransomed of the Lord shall return and come to Zion with singing. Everlasting joy shall be upon their heads, and they shall obtain joy and gladness, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away." I can't help but think of this year that we have had without really being able to sing with one another or shout or rejoice. And so this last verse that I said really reaches into my own soul and mind and says, we will sing together once again. I'm very lucky to be able to sing with my mom right now, but I miss singing with a group of people. Now, today's activity is actually, we're going back to the Creche, the barn that is hidden by my head. But you can see the other figures up behind me, the angel and Mary and Joseph. So today I'm going to introduce a figure who is very important to the story, but again, doesn't really get mentioned specifically. There are some folk songs about this particular character. It is the donkey. I've always loved this donkey. He's just kind of, looking around placidly, but he's got alert ears. This is, of course, from the Creche set that I grew up with, that Mom always had displayed. I think that my sister used to actually take the figures and make little stories about what was going on, and just weave these just whole scenes around it. Now this donkey, he bore Mary. As Mary and Joseph traveled to Bethlehem, this donkey was the one that actually he was the beast of burden. And as I said, doesn't really have much identity in the story other than that. But without the donkey, there would be no journey in the Gospel of Luke towards Bethlehem. So the donkey plays a significant role for all that, well, he's a donkey. He's silent. He doesn't really talk at all, but it's still a significant role. So I ask you, in your life, where do you see those significant roles that are often, those people who are often not acknowledged as having their own story, their own tale? If I remember correctly, we actually had a folk tale, I think in one of our various children's books, about the donkey, about the story from the point of view of the donkey. Excuse me. So, so think about the role of the donkey, the hardworking beast that really, needs to have more of an acknowledgement of being a full character in the story, and just isn't, other than in children's folk tales or the made-up stories of a young little girl. I also want to introduce you to another cultural tradition. Again, this is from the book Faithful Families for Advent and Christmas by Tracy Smith. And I'll, of course, have a link in the video description to the full book. She gave permission for pastors who are using this resource to use up to 5 resources. But I do encourage you to actually go out and get the book for yourselves. I got the Kindle version, but there's also hard copies, which are admittedly easier to write in. The tradition that I want to tell you all about, it's called, and I will probably mispronounce the Spanish, and I apologize. It is Las Novenas, and it comes from Colombia. And she says that her husband Elias is from Colombia. And this is a tradition that starts actually on December 16th, the 9 days before Christmas. So again, more of this counting and marking things. There's a lot of that in various cultures, is this marking time. Now this one is interesting. In many cultures you have a building, gradually 1, and then the next day is 1 and 2, and the day after that is 1, 2, 3, etc. The way that this particular tradition operates is it is a 9-part prayer or liturgy, or however you want to do it, that you actually say every single day. And the template is that part 1 is a general opening. It is a prayer to God that just opens you up. Part 2 is for Mary. Part 3 is for Joseph. Part 4 is for the baby Jesus. Part 5 is for the wise men. Part 6 for the angels. Part 7 is for today. Part 8 is for joys. And part 9 is for a closing. You had an opening and you have a closing. And it's just simple little phrases. She gives an example of a novena prayer. And it starts off, God, we give you thanks for this day and every day. And during these 9 days, we remember. And here we have part 2. Mary, the mother of Jesus, who was an example of faith and courage. Joseph, Jesus' earthly father, who was an example of loyalty and strength. The baby Jesus, who was God, born a tiny baby. So those are 3 of the parts. And I won't continue with the rest. You have to get the book for that. Now, you can use that outline and write your own prayer, or even go online and research various novena prayers. And while she says that you say this prayer every day, there's a little tagline at the end where she says if you're writing your own prayer, you can write it all at once and pray it every day. Or you can actually, following this outline, build the prayer one day to the next. Add 1 line for each day for 9 days until you have included all the parts, she says. So there's actually a couple different ways to do this, and I encourage you to explore it. So that is your task for today, is explore building a prayer. It is the 16th, so today's the opening. So open yourself to Emmanuel, God with us. Emmanuel, Emmanuel, a child is born, a child is born. Sing glory unto God on high, joy to the world this night, and to all people peace, and to all people peace, and to all people peace, and to all people peace.